Hey, it's been a long time. I don't know why I haven't made a video in a while. I had a recent hyperfixation on Sims 4. Yes, Tears of the Kingdom is out and I've been playing Sims 4. But MapJ's back again. Where he last left off in this new and very exciting 2024 Oscars race, the Cannes Film Festival has since featured some bigwig and critically acclaimed films. Spider-Verse 2 has sort of electrified the system, and we probably already know about most, if not all, of the big movies that will be in the discussion. The question is, which ones will live up to the hype, which ones are going to surprise us, and which ones are going to crash and burn. There's going to be a few of those. This part of the year comes with a lot of speculation, so I'm pretty much looking at tea leaves, so don't be surprised if I get things wrong. With that said, I have a real good feeling about these particular tea leaves. I think these leaves know a thing or two. Trust me. I try to focus less on stats and more around who is voting. I brought Academy voters down to 5 relative archetypes who each tend to like and dislike certain things. The olds like safe and traditional movies that are feel-good, cheerleaders are industry socialites who like reading on one of their own, popcorn munchers are normies who like movies that are accessible and talked about, messengers value movies most for what they represent, and art house snobs like the real eccentric biz. I also try to consider the voting history of each branch for each category. Studios and distributors also mean a lot at this stage in the game. They essentially act as agents representing each film throughout its Oscars campaign. Some agents are, of course, better than others. Netflix will give voters and journalists full-on care packages with gifts, custom art, and behind-the-scenes information. MGM will put the title of the film over the actresses' faces in the official poster. Of course, each agent is not going to represent all of their films to their fullest, so we're probably not going to overrepresent one studio if we can help it. Beyond that, critics' reviews, taking a look at the filmmaker's previous works, and vibes. We're vibing. Best Picture. I still think Killers of the Flower Moon is the most likely film to get nominated here. The fact that it premiered in Cannes to grand reviews really helps too. It's apparently one of Scorsese's best films, and he's been in the business of making great films since the 70s, so that is a high bar. However, I don't think Flower Moon is gonna win Best Picture. Recently, the Oscars have favored the underdogs over the expected big names, so the easy pick is likely not to pan out. I want to go for a bigger swing and put my tentative chips in Past Lives. Celine Song's directorial debut, distributed by A24, follows two childhood sweethearts in South Korea who reunite in adulthood, now that one of them is married and has immigrated to the States. Past Lives is not going to be as chaotic and momentous as the last Best Picture winner and other A24 representative Everything Everywhere All at Once, but that could be a good thing. Oscars voters are probably going to be in the mood for something chiller and more meditative after the sausage fingers and butt plugs that was last year, and this film not only fits that chiller description, but it also benefits from being called by pretty much every movie critic I follow as one of, if not the best movie of the year. It's going to be championed by arthouse snobs, so it's definitely getting nominated. I still remain convinced that Dune Part 2 is going to match the original success. Denis is a powerful phenomenon. I also think Emerald Fennell's newest film, Saltburn, is definitely in the conversation. Saltburn apparently represents a directorial step up for Fennell, and it should fit that social satire slot that is becoming a real staple in Oscars past. The holdovers is much higher in my predictions than it was a few months ago, and we know nothing more about the film other than the fact that it's going to be in TIFF. It is more that I lost a bit of confidence in other films in the conversation. Still, if the holdovers turns out to be really good and gets a lot of TIFF coverage, then I think it might absolutely become Focus Feature's main focus. I can kind of see this movie becoming that chill and feel-good winner I was describing earlier. It is a Christmas movie after all. I can also see it feeling a bit corny and stock and Green Booky, which, by the way, used to be a good thing before Green Book came out. Let's wait and see. Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer is coming soon, in the soon-to-be legendary July 21st. This is going to be a 3-hour-long biopic about the man who invented the atomic bomb, and I can't tell if this is a strength or a flaw. Still, I believe in Nolan quite a bit, and with Cillian Murphy as a Best Actor leading contender, it should have that extra Oscars push even if it ends up being just good instead of great. This movie really only needs to be good. The Color Purple is a musical film based off of the renowned stage musical, based off of the renowned book. It has a long and storied history. I gotta be honest, the trailer doesn't give me a whole lot to be confident about, personally. I guess I was expecting a bit more spectacle, and I feel like that, more often than not, tends to be needed with movie musicals in the Oscars race. However, Warner Bros. Is backing this one up, and if it is the big musical of the season with huge acting showcases, it's more likely than not going to be able to campaign itself. Yorgos Lanthimos' Poor Things is absolutely the weirdest film here, and the trailer does absolutely nothing to try to hide that. Look at this poster, what is this? This collaboration also brought us former Best Picture nominee, The Favorite, which was a bit more conventional, sure, but there's history with the Academy. I also believe this will remain Searchlight's top priority since Next Goal Wins has not turned many hearts and minds as of now, sorry Taika. May December looks to be a comedy about an actress trying to take notes on and study a famously problematic actress of past, older. I know some people saw it in Cannes, but despite there already being reviews, I feel like I know little to nothing about what this is. I have heard good things about the acting, however, and this looks to be one of two main candidates for Netflix's big push. It's this or Maestro, and I have little confidence in Maestro at the moment due to solely gut feeling, so I'm gonna bet on this. Either way, if Netflix puts all their energy into putting one of their films on the docket, it's going to be on the docket. The last and most contentious slot is going by default to Anatomy of a Fall, the latest Cannes winner. That does not necessarily mean it's a Best Picture guarantee, not by any metric, but it should be worth considering, especially since it looks to be an engaging courtroom drama with an apparently neat gimmick that I'm yet to look into. I was considering putting The Zone of Interest on this slot instead, which was definitely the critical darling of Cannes, currently holding a 98 in Metacritic, which is all-timer status. However, I also hear that Zone of Interest is highly experimental, less of a conventional narrative and more of a portraiture. I'm not sure if even the art house snobs of the Academy have enough oomph to overcome something this heavy and this abstract. That is definitely not a reason to avoid seeing this movie. Apparently it's one of the best of all time, apparently. Just don't expect it to be the kind of thing you pop on during a party. I think Zone of Interest is likely gonna do what After Sun did last year, and Anatomy of a Fall has the potential to sneak in as an artsy, but more approachable pick, like Triangle of Sadness. Now, one might be wondering, what about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse? And I want to believe, friends and fam, I want to believe. And I do think it could happen, but I have been burned before with Del Toro's Pinocchio and Soul. Despite its massive and also all-timer critical acclaim, it has so many roadblocks to overcome. It is not only an animated movie, and not only is this the second part in a trilogy, a potential two-tower situation, but it is also a clear part one, an unfinished first half of a bigger movie. Across the Spider-Verse has a lot to overcome in the Oscars race, and I think I need to personally see it win some precursors, or see where the race goes from here in a few months, before I can feel comfortable putting it in. With that said, these reviews are absolutely phenomenal, darn right, and there's a whole lot of momentum pushing it to be here. It would be well deserved, and I think I would feel pretty good about Beyond the Spider-Verse getting in anyway, whenever that comes out. Real quick now, let's talk about all the rest. The Michael Jordan shoe movie, Air, feels like it could have some Elvis potential, being a movie that might seem middling to critics but manages to be entertaining enough and do well enough of a certain demographic. Elvis pleased the moms and Air is for the dads. Though I think Amazon will be occupied on Saltburn, and I truly do not see people really pushing for Air all the way till January. Elvis was highly stylized and thus highly memorable, whether or not you liked it. Air is stylized, but much less so, and potentially more forgettable as a result. I mean, it's not about Michael Jordan, it's about the shoes. Former Best Picture director McQueen's Blitz also comes out via Apple TV this year, who, as far as distributors go, is proving to be an up-and-comer superpower. This movie's about people hiding out during the London Blitz in World War II, and is not to be underestimated. I truly think it could get in, but I know nothing about it. They say it's going to come out this year, but I don't believe them somehow. Barbie is going to be a cultural moment, but since I last talked about the movie I saw a teaser trailer and then a normal trailer, and it looks good and fun, but it doesn't feel Oscars to me. This is a weird comparison, but Barbie feels more like Nope, kind of, to me, being a summer movie that is immensely popular and critically acclaimed, but goes mostly ignored on Oscar season. Albeit, I think Barbie might be enough of a phenomenon to fare a little better than Nope did, and contends for a good amount of other text, so it's in a better position to be sure. Best Director. Director is one of those categories that is just super difficult to predict without having actually seen these movies. As of now, it feels like the most we can do is lean on big names and towards films that will most likely have a lot of directing, meaning a lot of style and a lot of large set pieces. This should naturally lead us into considering either Martin Scorsese for Killers of the Flower Moon or Denis Villeneuve for Dune Part 2. Of course, that logic does not necessarily check out in practice. The Oscars do not necessarily go with big directing names or overly stylized films. Scorsese has surprisingly only won one Oscar for director in 2006, and for Dune Part 1, Denis was infamously snubbed out of the category entirely. Still mad about that, by the way. Previous winners include Power the Dog and Roma and Parasite, artsy and pristine. Though EO winning over Tar defeats that point a little, I would argue the Daniels kind of fit more with the artsy and small crowd than the big blockbuster makers, at least in narrative. So if I am to commit to this train of logic, I feel like I would have to say Celine's Song for Past Lives, although I'm not super confident. Emerald Fennell for Saltburn could also steal that win, but it could also be snubbed entirely. From what I heard about the movie though, I believe it's getting in. And for that fifth and sometimes foreign, but more accurately very artsy fifth slot, I think if Anatomy of a Fall gets in for Best Picture, then Justine Triet gets in for Director. Again, like Triangle of Sadness. However, I want to flag Jonathan Glazer for the Zone of Interest, because if that movie does end up in Best Picture, I think Glazer could actually be a dark horse favorite to win. Best Actress. I don't know anything about The Color Purple as a story, and I'm planning on keeping it that way so I can experience the movie sorta blind, so I'll go ahead and take all of your words that Fantasia Barrino has nabbed one heck of an Oscar-winning role. The rest become a good bit more difficult to figure out. I've heard raves about Natalie Portman from May December in particular, though. She plays the method actress who is looking into the celebrity. I do feel pretty good that May December is going to be Netflix's Oscars rep, and even if it wasn't, I feel like she could still get in. Greta Lee stars in Past Lives and again, raves. Perhaps a stellar performance, but since I think Past Lives is going to be big, sure. Sandra Hüller is apparently spectacular in Anatomy of a Fall as a writer trying to prove her innocence in the death of her husband. I hear she is huge in Germany and also stars in The Zone of Interest, so this will likely be the year she crosses over to the States if she hasn't already. The fifth slot, however, was very, very tricky. I tentatively put Emma Stone from Poor Things, and look, I know this is going to be a weird performance. She's playing a Frankenstein's monster sort of baby woman, but like that gives her something to do, and she's one of the biggest actresses working today. She's also the only other one in close contention I personally had anything to say about. Best Actor. I think like last year, there's a clear top 3 for Best Actor. I'm putting my chips into Cillian Murphy, playing J. Robert Oppenheimer from Oppenheimer. The man he is playing is super interesting and there is so much material to work with. By the looks of the trailer, it feels as though Murphy is successfully tapping into that material too. His closest competition is definitely, I think, Bradley Cooper in Maestro, which sort of feels like Brandon Fraser to Murphy's Austin Butler, because Bradley Cooper will be undoubtedly caked in a makeup and prosthetics playing Leonard Bernstein. I just don't think Maestro will perform all that well. Granted, The Whale didn't do that well either, and Fraser still won, so I might be dooming myself to make the same mistakes, but I have a real gut feeling and I'm gonna follow it. Leonardo DiCaprio then is probably what Colin Farrell was last year. DiCaprio is apparently amazing in Killers of the Flower Moon, and some are claiming this is his best performance. Don't count out my man at all, but when it comes down to it, Oppenheimer and Maestro are both movies that are pretty much designed to prop up their lead actors, while DiCaprio will simply be a very good part of a larger movie. After that, I'm throwing in Kingsley Benadir because he's playing Bob Marley, but the jury is still out on whether this is going to be an Elvis or a Whitney Houston I Want to Dance With Somebody, as far as music biopics go. You could either put Coleman Domingo or Paul Giamatti in this fifth slot, but today I think I'm going to give it to Giamatti. Starring as a grumpy teacher in a feel-good comedy feels like it will get a lot of that easy-watching traction that tends to be rewarded by the actors branch, while starring in a movie about a civil rights icon might not. It hasn't last year. Sorry, Deadweiler. I'm also treating Barry Keoghan really seriously. I want to know more about the movie first. Supporting Actress. Lily Gladstone has apparently been the sort of spectacular new talent that has been successful in the supporting acting race in these past few years, and I feel really good about predicting her for the win. A subtle performance I hear, but sort of the heart of Killers of the Flower Moon. From there, I'm trusting word of mouth about Brooks and Henson from The Color Purple. Apparently people are also arguing that Brooks could win here. I believe somebody ought to get represented from Saltburn, and Rosamund Pike feels like that kind of big name, and Fifth slot is between Moore from May December and Randolph from The Holdovers, but I think Julianne Moore playing a real-life problematic actress will excite the acting branch enough to secure a nomination. That's kind of what they're into. Problematic, real people. I did put Viola Davis from Air, but there's a considerable gap between my 6 and 7. Still, I can see a future where that happens, especially after her egregious snub last year. Supporting actor. If I'm predicting Past Lives to win Best Picture, I feel like it would help to have an acting win to tout, and I have that sort of feeling about John Magaro. The buzz I've been hearing about his performance too tells me that this is a very emotional, compelling role, and having seen the movie for myself, I agree. I don't think he will have all that much competition, but Robert De Niro is also great, apparently, in Killers of the Flower Moon. Although he plays a villain, and not really a fun villain I hear, like Heath Ledger's Joker or Javier Bardem's Anton, De Niro is playing a real-life psychotic and racist guy who was directly responsible for actual deaths of many members of the Osage tribe. If De Niro truly is great, he is definitely going to get nominated, especially coming out of a big Oscars movie like this. And I have heard that it's not necessarily an all-heavy performance, he's given some funny stuff to do, but I do not see him going for the win. Charles Melton has some great scenes in May December, I heard, and power of Netflix. I do have Ryan Gosling from Barbie lower than most people though. It is largely because I am maintaining a wait-and-see approach to Barbie, and though word of mouth states he might be the greatest part of the movie, playing Ken, the stuff I've seen from the trailer makes it feel like a very good comedic performance. Those can get nominated, albeit I feel like Barbie would have to be in the conversation first, but they barely win. This simultaneously feels like too high and too low for Gosling, if that makes sense. I don't really know what to do. Lastly, I couldn't choose between William Dafoe or Mark Ruffalo, both from Poor Things. I want to choose Brian Tyree Henry from Flint Strong. He's one of our most talented up-and-coming actors, and he's playing a coach, so he's got lots of material. I'm just not sure if the acting branch is going to nominate him 2 years in a row. Between Dafoe and Ruffalo, I flipped a coin, haha. Best Original Screenplay. I am tentatively going to say Past Lives largely due to a bit of lack of competition. Of course, I'm not saying it doesn't sound like a stellar screenplay. It is a stellar screenplay. It just doesn't feel like the kind of big flashy screenplay one might expect to win, at least at a glance. It doesn't really have stylized dialogue, nor does it have a story with many twists and outlandish concepts. It's slice of life, meditative, and down to earth, and just well written. However, Emerald Fennell did win the same Oscar for her last film, Promising Young Woman, so clearly Saltburn has a good shot at the prize. From there, Anatomy of a Fall being a courtroom drama is bound to be driving off of the strength of its screenplay. Even if it doesn't get into Best Picture, this should be considered for original screenplay. May December and The Holdovers are in largely for the same reason. They're in the Best Picture conversation and seem to be relatively writing-based. Original screenplay looks to be a bit of a chiller category this year when compared to adapted. I also don't know if Barbie or Oppenheimer are going to be original or adapted. I'm considering them both for adapted. Best Adapted Screenplay. I already feel like Killers of the Flower Moon is a lock to win adapted screenplay. Sure, nothing should be taken as 100%, especially this early in the race, but given the raves I've heard about the movie not only for its entertainment value, but especially for the way it depicted these real-life horrible events, I don't see anything else beating it. All of the rest of my slots feel up in the air. However, the original Dune got nominated, so why not the sequel? I'm typically unsure about blockbusters, but as of late, I think action screenplays have been getting recognized more often. Poor Things is adapted from a well-known book, and the movie looks to be having a lot of fun with its source material. Great if this movie ends up doing well, not so great if this is all just too weird for the Academy. Still, after EOW, I imagine there is some taste at least for the weirder stuff. The Zone of Interest is an interesting case because it really does not have much of a conventional narrative, I hear, and therefore not much of a screenplay. Not that this kind of thing has not gone acknowledged before, like in Nomadland. I have Zone of Interest tentatively on here due to sheer critical acclaim, but I acknowledge it would have to do real good with other categories to get in here, better than I'm currently predicting. I'm inconsistent. The Color Purple is weird because it's a musical which typically does not get a lot of credit in the screenplay category, but it is based off of a renowned literary classic, which does tend to get points when well done. Again, haven't seen the musical proper, but I assume it has more dialogue than the average musical, which should count in its favor. As for potential steals, Across the Spider-Verse represents a lot of unexplored ground when it comes to the Oscars, so I'm hesitant to place it officially. However, Once Every Blue Moon, an animated film, has gotten nominated for screenplay, and this one, in addition to critical acclaim, has at least a bit of Everything Everywhere All at Once appeal, which did win last year. I'm playing conservative of Spider-Verse for my own sanity personally, but it is a real possibility. Also, Barbie feels like it would definitely get in if it's really popular, but it too is kind of a weird pick and I need to see the cards in its sleeves. Yo yo yo, if you liked this, please give this video a like, and if you want to see more Oscars predictions and other movie reviews, please subscribe and give a ring-a-ding-ding of the little bell icon. On to the rest of the predictions. Best International Feature. Best International Feature is a particularly fun category to predict in this stage of the game, because in the Oscars, a film will not be considered unless its country of origin selects one of its films to submit to the Academy. It needs to be in a foreign language, which is why Triangle Sadness was not considered last year, and it needs to be that country's one official submission, which is why RRR was not considered last year. However, we do not currently know which film each country is going to select, so some of these films I'm predicting might not be in the conversation entirely. With that said, some films are certainly very likely given their present popularity. Anatomy of a Fall will absolutely be France's submission since it won the Palme, sure, Titan did as well, and France did not select it, but Anatomy of a Fall is a lot more conventional and less car-y. I haven't seen Titan, I hear it's great. If I'm currently predicting it to be nominated for Best Picture, then that should absolutely be the winner, though I am also keeping an eye on the Zone of Interest, which could very well steal that frontrunner slot away. Third, I have Hayao Miyazaki's final film, How Do You Live? Sometimes an animated film gets in here, and given Miyazaki is arguably Japan's most renowned current filmmaker, and the fact that it is very likely to get international mainstream attention, then the only thing holding this film back is whether or not it's gonna be good. Which it is, it's gotta be, I need this, or whether or not Japan selects Kuraida's Monster instead. Monster is by another esteemed director and premiered at Cannes to great reviews. I don't know for sure which one is gonna rep Japan, but either one would absolutely be nominated if Japan chooses it. The rest of my predictions here are cop-outs. I went with the two international films I happen to have heard the most about. Chances are we will hear more about stellar international films later into the season. Best Documentary Feature. Look, I've heard of two of these. I've heard wonderful things about Beyond Utopia, following families who are attempting to escape North Korea, and I have heard that Four Daughters, following a family in which 2 out of 4 daughters have disappeared, is similarly compelling. Documentary feature is usually not my strong suit, especially early in the season, so I'm kind of going off of word of mouth. Don't take this very seriously. Best Animated Feature. Animation looks to be having another banger year in 2023. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse has somehow gotten even more renowned than its animated feature-winning original and feels well suited to reclaim that crown. And very well deserved too, that feels pretty done. If a film is getting Best Picture attention, it's definitely gonna win animated feature. And yet, Hayao Miyazaki's apparent swan song, How Do You Live, approaches, and it now looks to be a clash between the old masters and the new innovators. My favorite film director versus a bold proposition for what the future of film could become. Still, How Do You Live looks like it's gonna be more for the artsy crowd, especially considering they are not going to release a trailer until it officially releases in Japan, a move Miyazaki himself is pretty unsure about. It is unlikely this movie is gonna beat Spider-Verse, but if anybody could, it's gonna be Hayao, the bomb, Miyazaki. It's not, though. Elemental got panned in Cannes, but once it released to wider audiences, critical reception had gotten a lot more positive. I think it will be beloved enough to get in, especially with Disney Pixar's backing, though maybe this is a tentative pick. Chicken Run, Dawn of the Nugget will probably stand out due to that trademark Aardman charm and stop-motion appeal, as well as being the sequel to a film that came out roughly 2 decades ago. So there might be a bit of nostalgia, and Aardman in general is very popular with the Oscars, even winning Best Animated Feature with Wallace and Gromit. And lastly, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem looks really good. I'm pretty sure this is going to do what Puss in Boots did last year, revitalizing an otherwise dormant-ish film franchise with an original new art style. We'll have to see if the story and jokes will match. Of course, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is by design more slivey and juvenile, so it's gonna be more of an acquired taste maybe, but I mean, by gosh, it looks so good. Spider-Verse was the best thing to happen to animation because its influence will be giving us more movies like this, and I am very excited. I feel really confident in my top 5, so much so that this is the category I feel most confident about having predicted correctly in this whole video. However, Wish could potentially steal if it turns out we're underestimating it. Since Disney has kind of lost interest in marketing its animated movies nowadays. They tend to always look worse than they actually are pre-release. With that said, this trailer did not inspire a lot of confidence in Wish at all. Props to the artistic team for trying out a new art style, but it seems clear they were not given as much time to perfect that as, say, the team behind Puss in Boots or Mutant Mayhem got. It looks almost AI generated, unfortunately, and that bad press is probably going to stick to it. Nimona might benefit from a Netflix push as well, so keep an eye out on that one. Best Cinematography. It is also hard to judge cinematography having not seen these movies, and by proxy the cinematography, but Dune 1 won last year. I don't see why Dune 2 wouldn't do the same. I've heard great things about Killers of the Flower Moon. Scorsese films tend to be primarily renowned for their editing, and it can be easy to forget about its masterful cinematography as a result. But apparently Killers of the Flower Moon looks real good, so we won't have that problem. From the trailer, I can also tell that Oppenheimer will have great camera work, switching between black and white and color, so best of both worlds, and having a sequence of a bomb presumably blowing stuff up all in color and destructive beauty is gonna get it in here alone. The Color Purple is also a musical, and again, it doesn't look as flashy as our La La Lands and West Side Stories, but it feels like a solid enough bet. I feel like if Saltburn does represent a step up in Emerald Fennell's filmmaking, well, Promising Young Woman did already look very good, so I think we're underestimating Saltburn. Granted, Promising Young Woman didn't get nominated for cinematography in 2020, somehow, but it's not like every director's gonna get every nod in their first go-round. I'm trying to shoot not where the target is, but where the target is gonna go, you know? I can see Poor Things being nominated just for having such a unique visual style, though at this point I'm wondering if I'm over-predicting this movie. I see it more for some other techs. Depending on how well the Zone of Interest does, the branch might appreciate its slower and more methodological camera work. After all, given the unique nature of the film, the camera is doing a large part of the storytelling here. The cinematography branch does like to go with obscure and experimental stuff every now and then, so this could be a good underdog pick. Best Film Editing. Once again, Dune 1 won Film Editing, so it seems like Dune 2 would be a reliable bet. However, let us not completely overlook Killers of the Flower Moon. Scorsese always works with Thelma Schoonmaker, who is, in my opinion, the best editor in the business. Given she has been in the business for about as long as Scorsese himself, and she's won way more Oscars already than he did, it's gonna be a tight race, but I don't think voters are gonna put that much thought into it. If they voted for Dune 1, they're probably gonna stencil in Dune 2 and move on. The editing branch does tend to like films with the most editing, so I brought in the musical, The Color Purple. Musicals have editing up the wazoo, and Saltburn, since Promising Young Woman did also get nominated for editing. Why not? However, the editing branch is not a monolith, and there is usually one subtler and slower pick that gets in. These movies are applauded for their sense of restraint, and I think Past Lives might be that slower and more methodological pick given its potential popularity. However, if we want to talk about a lot of editing, well, Air could very well be this year's Elvis in editing, too. It's probably a safer fifth bet, honestly. Best Production Design. Dune Part 1 won Production Design. I think it is perfectly fair to predict its sequel for the same thing, especially considering a lack of competition. Even if I'm squeamish about Barbie as a whole in the Oscars race, Production Design feels super strong. Barbie reportedly used so much pink paint for its sets that it caused a global shortage, so something to look forward to. My only concern is how much of the movie takes place in Barbie Land and how much takes place in the mundane real world. If most of the movie takes place in Barbie Land, I do think this could very well take the win instead. The Color Purple is a musical, and I think that's all I probably need to say, though this does, again, feel a bit more grounded compared to other movie musicals. Wonka is coming out, and that has all the steam of movie musicals and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory after all. It depends on what they do with it. I need to see more of this movie. Poor Things looks insane when it comes to production design, very Wes Anderson. Unfortunately, Wes Anderson has been snubbed frequently before. Hello, Asteroid City. But I mean, it looks so good. Come on. Oppenheimer's reportedly building a lot of stuff to subsequently blow up, and a period drama is bound to have something going for it. I think Oppenheimer could easily be sniped by something a bit more subtler and meaningful like The Zone of Interest, or a safe Best Picture favorite like Killers of the Flower Moon. So I'm gonna go with Flower Moon. Best Costume Design. Barbie, despite my concerns, does have a few techs really going for it, and I think costume design is close to secure. It's a lock, dare I say. Through advertisements alone, we have seen so many different outfits on display. Barbie is practically a feature-length fashion show, and it helps that it is based off of something, being the Barbie toy line. It's unique, it's flashy, it's dress-up. Dune Part 2 is a sci-fi epic that is bound to feature a slew of new costumes. The original had a unique and striking visual identity, after all, and also got nominated. The color purple benefits from being a period piece and a musical. Again, not as flashy, it doesn't seem like a winner, but it's pretty secure for a nomination. Poor Things 2 has a unique visual design, perhaps an odd one, sure, but not too odd that it would alienate the costumes branch, I think. Poor Things looks like it's having a lot of fun with its costumes, and I think the branch will reward that. They've done that kind of thing in the past. As for that 5th slot, I'm not really sure. I kind of defaulted to Killers of the Flower Moon as a safe option, being a sort of period film and a big Oscars contender. I thought about Wonka, but I didn't want to overrepresent movie musicals, and if we are talking about period films, let's keep an eye out on Saltburn. Best Makeup and Hair. Maestro is a really powerful contender for Best Makeup and Hair, considering all the work they did on Bradley Cooper here. That's Bradley Cooper, that's him! Given Cooper is an actor frontrunner, these two categories tend to work together. Dune Part 2 is sure to get some points though. I do wonder if it's gonna give us anything new that is more impressive than the stuff we've seen in 1. Hey there, book readers, do we have anything to look forward to here in the makeup department? Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 has some legitimately insane stuff going on. If there are two things Marvel films still know how to do, it is typically costumes and makeup. I don't think it's gonna win, but I kind of think it deserves to. From there, we need to keep a lookout for other potential contenders, but Barbie is going on there for similar reasons I'm predicting it for costumes, although that's not a perfect correlate. And I'm assuming the artificial human stuff behind Poor Things is gonna involve some gucky goodness. I will never say that again, I'm sorry. Best Visual Effects. I admit I'm a little stumped beyond a pretty obvious winner that is Dune Part 2, original one, #Denis. Volume 3 is probably safe since people say this Marvel movie actually has good special effects, and the Oscars have at least shortlisted the ones people say are bad. I know very little about the creator except that this is another heavy sci-fi action film involving a war against artificial intelligence. No, I don't think this movie's about ChatGPT, and no, I don't think John David Washington is playing an internet artist. I think this is a coincidence. That would be a great movie though. A movie as a whole does not necessarily have to be popular to get in, so long as it has good or many special effects. The question is, will this movie be blockbuster ready, or is it going to feel like one of those chintzy Netflix originals that your dad has on in the background? I'm not the biggest sci-fi movie fan if you couldn't tell. I saw the trailer, and it looks fine. Sure, I'll keep it. Rebel Moon is a Zack Snyder space opera, a lot of sci-fi films, and we will see if this gets released. Oppenheimer is touting itself on having very little visual effects, but so did Top Gun Maverick, and that got a nod. If Oppenheimer is popular enough, it could do the same for having invisible special effects, which, to be fair, does deserve nods as well. Often the most impressive work is I wanted to take some more wild swings. I loved the heavier than usual reliance on practical effects in the Dungeons & Dragons movie, and the actual visual effects didn't look too bad either. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse has also been occasionally floated as a possibility. Animated films have been nominated once in a blue moon in this category, albeit they have only been for stop-motion films. It's not very clear to the average voter how animated films fit into visual effects. Even though animation and visual effects are largely one and the same, it's complicated. I think this is a long shot, but I'm gonna put this over Oppenheimer and have it in as a placeholder. Best Sound. Okay, I'm not sure if Dune Part 2 is actually winning this many categories, but I mean, it's the tech sweeper of the year, it just makes a lot of sense in foresight. Dune Part 1 had so many sci-fi sounds, dude, it was practically ASMR. I don't see why Dune Part 2 would do any worse. Then again, Oppenheimer could get in high just off of that inevitable explosion scene alone. The visuals might be the main attraction, but the sound of the atomic bomb is what will make it real. And based off of the trailers, the sound work is not going to start and stop with the bomb. I think they're going to use state-of-the-art Nolan sound work very strategically, and there's a world where Oppenheimer can win this. The color purple is once again a big movie musical. Sound is baked into the thing like pie filling. I'm gonna go out on a limb here, but the sound work in Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse impressed me almost as much as the visuals. Sure, that's largely to do with the score, but I feel like we're very much underestimating the sound potential behind this movie. It's crisp, it's beautiful, it can be funny, and most importantly, it's a lot. Besides, animated movies are often represented in sound, and animated movies hardly get bigger than Across the Spider-Verse. If you want to go for a safe last bet, choose Killers of the Flower Moon or Ferrari, the latter being a car-based crime thriller, I think. Best Original Score! Best Original Score is one of my favorite categories on Oscars tonight, and it sounds like we already have plenty of great contenders. Dune Part 2 feels like the obvious pick to win, and it is, but I don't actually think it's very tight. We'll have to see if this time Hans Zimmer can create a soundtrack that does the same great stuff as the first, while still sounding like something new. If Part 2 feels too samey, then the reward can go either to Oppenheimer or, hear me out, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I mean, we all know kind of what Oppenheimer's gonna offer, big heavy thudding and orchestral, very much like last year's winner, All Quiet on the Western Front. Whether or not we like that, this seems to be an Oscars voters thing, but Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse feels almost Babylon-like in the way it weaves its story, editing, and pacing into the music, and how the music masterfully weaves between its hip-hop tracks. The score has gotten a lot of buzz, more so than the first, and I really feel like that momentum is going to continuously build as the year goes on. This could be a passion pick, a populist win, perhaps. The Oscars love leitmotifs, right? Often that's where their attention starts and stops. That's probably why All Quiet on the Western Front won. That's back, huh? Spider-Verse has leitmotifs up to wazoo, and it's very good, with a bunch of unique sounds and musical stylings. Just think about it, okay? Mwah. I've heard great things, too, about Killers of the Flower Moon, and that feels safe, though I do wonder how much needle drops are in this movie. Scorsese is more known for his use of licensed songs than having original scores, and I worry those are going to steal the show. I also put Barbie, for now, due to the power of Alexander Desplat. With all the text I'm nominating Barbie for, I kind of feel like I should be nominating it for Best Picture, but I think 12 is pretty high overall. Now we need to talk about How Do You Live. Miyazaki movies have god-tier scores, and Joe Hisaishi is pretty much the best composer in the industry. I need this to happen so badly, but I got to be honest, number 6 feels too high. This is absolutely a hope diction. Another big snub is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Now, I would have absolutely predicted this movie if this was indeed John Williams' last film score, like it was initially stated to be. He has since pulled a Miyazaki, or perhaps a Logan Roy, and backtracked postponing his retirement. Without the narrative appeal, I feel like this score is going to get lost in the shuffle, and a score that sounds too much like other Indiana Jones scores in a movie that's not considered particularly good. I've seen the movie, it's not particularly good, and the score feels like other Indiana Jones scores. Still, there are so many possible and interesting contenders as well. I hear The Zone of Interest is haunting and meditative. Challengers is probably going to be really good with Reznor and Scott, and I hear Past Lives takes a super interesting approach to its score. I'm predicting it to win Best Picture, and it's only my number 10 here. Score is stacked. All in all, we're in an interesting place with Oscars predictions and movies in general because a lot of the best stuff is yet to come out. I think that's a great place to be, personally, because when we see movies normally, then we just get the movie watching experience. But this way, we have a full year's worth of anticipation and whatnot. It's all in good fun, that's all.
Peaches, peaches.